Welcome to Vendetta Sports Media. This is Eight Sided Freaks. Today we're here breaking down UFC 319. We have 5 main card fights, and it is a very good card. Main event, I think, is one that people have unanimously been saying that this is one of the most anticipated of the year. It certainly is for me. And then the remainder of the card may not have a second title fight. Probably not even a number one contender, potentially for the co-main event, but there's a lot to be discussed with that. But 5 fights that I think are all very good fights and should be very entertaining and gives us a lot to talk about here for a preview show. And then, as always, we'll end the show with some final thoughts on the prelims. So that doesn't leave us much time today to talk about the $7.7 billion broadcast deal with Paramount, which is quite big news, but we can keep that one in the back pocket, and I have a feeling we're going to see more and more news with that. So when time comes, we'll probably save that for a rainy day and then talk about whatever updates we have as well with that deal. If you're interested in content right away, wrote quite a few articles on that at vendettasportsmedia.com, so you can check those out there. Now, let's get into the UFC 319 main card. We'll start right at the main event. Dricus Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev for the middleweight title. Anthony, we can swing it over to you first. When you look at this fight on paper, how excited are you for this one in comparison to some of the recent pay-per-views we have had?
I'm extremely excited. I think this is one of the best fights they could put on. Obviously, I was super hyped for the Ilya one, but I think we would agree that we're definitely all kind of leaning Ilya. I think even the odds makers in the books we're leaning his way. But when it comes to two fighters, maybe at their height or in their prime at least, we don't know. I guess with either of them how high they could go yet, but I think this is finally one of the matchups where I think we're getting two of the best people at the right time, where both of them are for really in their prime and facing off. And this is also one where I've gone back and forth quite a bit, and I've can see both avenues for both people to win a fight too. So that is always a really good sign too of a healthy division and a fun fight too.
Yeah, I mean, going off the back of that, like you said, James, this is one of the fights that we've all been wanting. Every UFC fan you've talked to, or you can talk to, you see it all over social media. Everyone wanted this fight. Everyone's been waiting for Khamzat to finally get his title shot. Thought it was going to be at 170. It's actually at 185 instead. No complaints by me. And this is the most exciting. I'm just looking back at the past pay-per-views. Sure, I was excited for some of these other ones, like Jack Della Maddalena. Seeing him fight against Bilal was exciting, mostly because I wanted to see Bilal lose. But I don't think I've been this excited for a main event of a pay-per-view since probably the first Aljo or first Sean O'Malley and Rob fight.
Yeah. I do agree that I think when I was looking a months ago at this summer and how this could play out, this was one of the fights that I was really hoping we'd get, and we eventually got it. The other two were John and Aspinall and Topuria and Makhachev. So now that we've got the one that was really hoping to get, I'm not going to complain. And yeah, I think this is one of the fights where in a very long time where I'm so interested to see how the fight goes. And there's been other big fights, but nothing that draws the same level of intrigue as to how the fight itself goes. Like that, Anthony, like you said, with Topuria and Charles, that was a very highly anticipated fight, but I was never like, wow, I wonder how this is going to go. And I think that's one thing that makes this fight really exciting compared to some of the previous pay-per-views we've had. And I also think there's a lot on the line because for a guy like Plessis, he's got a couple defenses already. Now he can add another against Chimaev, and his resume is looking pretty good all of a sudden. He would have Chimaev, Adesanya, Whitaker, Strickland twice. Like that, he'd be carving out a pretty good run for himself at middleweight. Conversely, DDP's a pretty good guy to win the belt off for someone who's going in there and earning that title for the first time in their career, and especially for a guy who has long been touted as a potential future champion. It's not like he's going out there and, winning it off a guy who lucked into a title. He's winning it off a guy who has defended the title multiple times and appears to be a pretty good fighter and a pretty good champion. So for both guys, there's a lot to win here aside from the belt itself. So betting odds currently moving quite a bit. Khamzat Chimaev has climbed himself all the way to minus 260. And then the comeback on Dricus du Plessis is plus 196. That has changed a decent amount. And the money is coming in on Khamzat at the moment and the last week or so. So, Jerry, you can lead us off on this one. When you're looking at this fight, what are the things you're looking at, and how do you potentially see this fight?
I mean, the biggest question I have is what kind of strength and wrestling does Khamzat have? First of all, is he going to be healthy? We obviously know all of his history stuff. I'd assume he's going to be healthy. Had a new coach before the Whitaker fight, and this is a big step up. Not saying anything bad against Bobby Knuckles, but we saw how he fought against RDR. His last legitimate win, because not taking anything against his opponents, but he fought Ikram Aliskerov, nowhere near his level. He beat Paulo Costa before that, but then it was a loss to DDP. So Robert Whitaker's been on the decline very much so, and I'm not saying that that's not a good win for Khamzat, pure domination, but it's one that this is a different level in. DDP is a very strong guy. He does have an okay-ish ground game. That goes into my concern for DDP is we haven't seen him have to use that much. When you're fighting a guy like Sean Strickland, you know what Sean Strickland's going to do. He can't wrestle. He's going to come right towards you. And in this case, he would get clapped a lot of the time. Adesanya, we know he's not going to wrestle. That's why he got submitted in the 4th round. It was just DDP used his wrestling at the right time. But it's going to be one of those things. I have a feeling this first couple rounds, if Khamzat doesn't get DDP out of there, it's going to be a very, very, very long fight for him.
That's where, and I agree, and that's kind of why I'm definitely leaning DDP so far, and it's for sure as of right now. That's why also that plus 190 has been staring at me the last couple of days. But I agree to pick up on where you left off is I think the gas tank and conditioning is going to be a huge part of it, and that's why it's tough for me to be uber confident that Chimaev will just pack him up in 1 or 2 rounds, because if that fight happens to go round 4, round 5, I would be feeling a lot more confidence in DDP. And the other thing, I'd go with the size when it comes to the wrestling. We've seen, Chimaev, I think DDP's physicality and size itself will maybe help him in the wrestling department and on the ground, because Chimaev has fought Whitaker, who was a former welterweight. It's a very smaller. He was a welterweight.
He was a lightweight,
and then give or take too. Obviously, his ground game is extremely decorated, so that's a tough one to truly compare. And then Usman, who is a little bit bigger of a welterweight, but regardless, so I think fighting someone like DDP with who is pretty massive, and then is also fights with a bit of a physicality to his game and kind of out muscles people, I think will be a little bit different look for Chimaev. And then I do like what DDP, I do think he has a decent ground game with some slick get-ups and just different looks he can give Chimaev. But kind of to your point, Jerry, DDP's been, even for how unorthodox and he looks like he's tired, he's still fighting good rounds 3 and rounds 4 recently, or even all the way to 5 in some of those Sean Strickland ones. However, when he was looking really bad early fights like Brunson, Till, that's when he had to do a lot more wrestling in those fights early. And like you said, we haven't seen it in a while, so that is one concern I'd have, to see if maybe that could all, really make DDP work wrestling-wise early rounds 1 and 2. Who's to say DDP's gas tank doesn't get as bad as it did in that till round 3, I think it was. But yeah, so those are still a lot of the physical conditioning, size, of those concerns. But I think even just that in itself offers up a lot of questions for this matchup.
Yeah, I think this is a really intriguing fight just because obviously you have the early round wrestling question for Chimaev. Like he's gonna wrestle early. Question is how much success does he have? Not just in the wrestling, but then once I assume he's gonna land takedowns at some point. Is he able to get to the back? Is he able to lock up a submission? Does DDP work up? How much energy is spent offensively grappling for Chimaev versus defensively grappling for Duplessis? Is Duplessis crazy enough to try and land a reversal or try and re-wrestle onto his own takedown attempts? Like, how insane is this guy? Like, I probably wouldn't advise it, but like, would you be utterly shocked if Duplessis was, re-wrestling and trying to get a takedown in the first or second round? Not to say I think it'd be a wonderful idea, but it wouldn't necessarily shock me as much as I think it would other people. And ultimately, I'm interested to see how Duplessis holds up in the grappling because a lot of the positives that we've seen from Duplessis, mixing in takedowns against Strickland, mixing takedown good work on top against Whitaker. Once he got to the top position, a lot that everything I just listed is offensive. That's all offensive strong points. Interested to see what happens when he's forced to flip and be more defensive. I'm optimistic that he can use his physicality and size to make it really hard for Chimaev to have sustained wrestling success. I am really interested to see the face-offs here. I'm interested to see how big these two look. I wouldn't be surprised if Chimaev's taller, but I'm interested to see once they're in there how thick these guys are because I think DDP is still probably Chimaev is a little bit longer. And then on the feet here, I find myself kind of believing that Chimaev's offensive striking is underrated. Some power in his hands, throws some kicks. He does some good things. He doesn't really do anything blatantly stupid, but like defensively, it's like I'm not entirely sold here, especially if a guy is going in there to fight Duplessis, who I mean, Duplessis doesn't exactly make it look the prettiest, but at the end of the day, he effectively lands really hard punches and kicks, which fuck how pretty it is. At the end of the day, that's what you're trying to do, and he's been able to do that. So I'm interested to see, like you guys have both mentioned, if Duplessis, defends takedowns, how gassed is Chimaev after, say, 7.5 minutes? And what does that look like when he's forced to stand and strike with Duplessis? What does it look like if he's throwing takedowns, pushing him to the fence, and getting really physical? I think that I hope that's what happens because I think that ends up being a really great fight if we get the second. Khamzat could dominate early, but if this gets close, and because Khamzat isn't going to back down, you put that guy in the corner, he's going to swing, and you can say the same about Duplessis. So I think if both these guys get tired and start trading, I think we're in for a really good scrap. So I ultimately kind of hope that is what happens here.
Yeah, I have a feeling that if this is on the feet, it's going to be one of the ugliest striking things to look at, but at the same time, so efficient and so clinical because of kind of what you said of DDP so goofy. He just kind of stands there and throws, does somehow defend himself as well. Where Khamzat, he has the power there, but I'm concerned a bit about his chin because we saw what aging Gilbert Burns did to him in that third round. If this goes fourth, fifth, then I guess it goes back to the gas tank. DDP's still going to be throwing hard. We saw him throwing hard against Dizzy. We saw him throwing hard against Sean Strickland in those late rounds. If he catches him late, I don't think it'll be one where Gilbert Burns clips him, he goes down. Gilbert Burns doesn't have the energy to really jump on him and finish him. I think we could see DDP doing something like that. I'm just pumped for this fight.
Yeah, I agree. I do think even though Burns did drop him, Chimaev or whatever, and that's kind of shows in the third round. Maybe when Chimaev's getting a little tired. Or I would also say, he kind of stopped shooting against Gilbert because I think he was worried about the jiu-jitsu. And Usman obviously had the wrestling capabilities to also slow down the offensive attack wrestling. So I just think, too, when he really has to start working for these takedowns, be that round 2, round 3, then he kind of starts going to not I shouldn't say only striking that being Chimaev because he shoots, but then sometimes the shots are pretty bad, and that's when it turns into that firefight, which we've seen. I mean, he has a good chin on him too. He's taken some shots, but to James's point too, the defense is not quite there compared to as good as he looks throwing the strikes. You definitely still have some fear standing up because that the overhand and everything. He still hits pretty hard, but he's just very touchable in there. So I do think I agree with you, Jerry, being on the ground round 1, if that's how you want to say it too. But I think he'll be able to defend the submissions enough. I fully intend on him getting taken down once, maybe twice. I don't know if he's going to go for reversal to try to stay on top, or if he's going straight to get back all the way up to his feet. But I think DP will be able to survive the onslaught of wrestling in the first or second. And then if Chimaev's gas take and everything is the same as it was in that Burns-Usman fight, I really think DDP is probably a little bit more live for a round 3 or round 4 finish too as well. I think so. And I think also depending on both their gas takes too, see how DDP does look in round 3 after maybe 2 rounds of wrestling. But I think he still has the possibility to offensively wrestle too, to mix in a takedown with his striking in round 3 or round 4.
Yeah, the one critique I have about Chimaev's offensive grappling, and this is a beautiful thing when he's fresh and can do it, but he is very explosive. He shoots from a decent distance out, and he shoots very low, single or double leg entries depending on the specific takedown. But that is a style that just doesn't translate as well into the later rounds when you're fatigued, in comparison to getting to the clinch and working for upper body takedowns, which he can. Not to say he can't do those things, but a lot of his highlight offensive success has come from being really, really quick at getting to the lower body. And even if he has to work up to the upper body, he gets there by going to the lower body first and then working up. That's just a really hard thing to do for 5 rounds consistently, especially if that other guy is making you work. Now, if he's throwing on a backpack and not using much energy each round, that changes things. But I doubt that is the most likely way this fight goes. So for my prediction, I do as well think Du Plessis is going to win this fight. I think he's good enough. He has a good enough mix of understanding of grappling positions and physicality and durability and willingness. There isn't a second in there where I think Du Plessis is scared of Chimaev, and there isn't a second in there where I think Du Plessis is gonna look for the door if things aren't going his way. And those, I think, are important things when you're fighting Chimaev. So that combination of things makes me believe he's gonna survive early. And if he survives early, like he has a great track record of fighting and making things sloppy and finding success in those types of fights. Even if he's tired, he tends to also make his opponent tired. And if they're both tired, he tends to want to win more than the other guy. And this is going to be a fight where he's got more experience doing that, and he especially has more experience doing that over the course of 5 rounds. And last thing is he also digs to the body. He kicks the body really hard, which I think is going to be very useful in those late rounds. It could really stifle some Chimaev offense. So I think DDP wins this fight. I could see a decision. I could see him winning like a 3-4-5, or maybe he squeaks a 2-4-5 or something like that. But I ultimately think that he's going to get the finish in those championship rounds. So DDP by finish. And last thing, some people dislike Chimaev or whatever. It's not really an anti-Chimaev pick. I just think Du Plessis, who is the champion, tends to be a fairly hard matchup for him at this point in time in the weight class. So I think he's just kind of reached. Like if he got to this spot against Adesanya or Strickland, it'd be a much different conversation. Du Plessis is a far, far harder matchup for him than those two guys.
Yeah, and I'm just going to go off because I never really gave my prediction earlier, but I'm kind of going to play a little bit of devil's advocate because you did bring up the size-wise, and I don't know who I'm actually officially picking when we do the write-up or who it comes Saturday, but in the case of this, you talked about the size-wise. If DDP doesn't come in looking, and I assume he will look so much thicker than Khamzat, it could be interesting because we know how strong Khamzat is. If he does take you to the ground, he has the ability to sprawl, as does DDP defensively. But if Khamzat gets you in the right position and just we talk about Khamzat's gas tank. If DDP gets taken down, struggles a bit, works his way up, and then immediately gets taken down again. That could be brutal for him in those first 2 rounds and just have him wiped out. Maybe allows for Khamzat to get around and get a submission and get some hooks in and kind of just wear him out completely, which easier said than done. But just going from that opposite side, I do see a real world where Khamzat wins this fight early and makes it look very, very easy.
That's why I think this fight's tough, especially like as I want to go DDP because, yeah, it's funny because I mean Khamzat, I would like to see all the odds breakdown of fight to go the distance, 4 round 5 finish, all that stuff, round 1 finish because I have path to victory is a round 1, get him out of there, sub and everything, even at round 2. So, but it's just I was thinking like when it came to like. We were pretty confident Topuria round 1 finish. Good thing I also was confident in him win round 2, 3, 4, and 5. Though. Like this one is tough because like you have Chimaev round 1, and it's a very likely possibility. But it's just hard to stick with him when if he doesn't get that round 1, if I were to pick him, I would just be biting my nails round 3, round 4, and round 5, watching the rest of the fight play out. But that's what could make it fun too. If this ends up going to around 5, yes, seeing where these fighters are at and what type of fun and heart that they would have in there.
So your question about the odds here, just for like a deeper dive into what the actual betting odds are. Khamzat Chimaev minus 260 favorite, and that puts him at minus 145 to win this fight inside the distance, and then breaking it down further from there. Chimaev to win in round 1 is plus 270, which is a pretty low number for round 1 of a championship fight. And then plus 500, plus 1,000. So you're pretty much doubling each time out, and then you're getting to plus 1,600 and plus 2,200 for that round 5 finish. Meanwhile, Plessis as a plus 196 underdog, his inside the distance is plus 320, and then him to win in round 1 is plus 1,200, followed by 1,500, 1,900, 2,200, and 2,700.
Yeah.
So obviously much less of a. Those are obviously big numbers, and for those who don't know how those numbers are structured, in order to come up with those Plessis round prop lines, it's heavily dependent on these lines as an underdog. So for him to be a plus 200 level underdog, and then have that correlation of round props, is really, really, says a lot in his ability to get those late round finishes. Even though those are big numbers, they don't spike the way you would expect for a plus 200 underdog in a championship fight. You can look at Gerald Meerschaert's like plus 200 on the card, and his round props are much more of long shots in comparison to the Plessis ones over the course of 5 rounds. So.
Yeah, you said DDP plus 2,200 for round 4 finish.
Yes.
Yeah. And then what was round 5? Was
2,500?
27. Those looking mighty tempting.
Yeah,
I will take those. Yeah.
I checked already like 2 days ago, and I'm thinking round 3 or round 4. I don't know what I'll pick yet, but on the book I was looking at plus 2,000 round 4, and I was like, that could be sprinkled.
DDP by decision?
But
DDP decision. So the straight up props for DDP are
straight up decision
plus 500 KO, plus 600 decision, plus 1,000 submission.
Huh.
So
they're thinking of knockout more than a decision.
Yes, and for those who really want to get and dicey with things. You take DDP round 5 submission at plus 7,500. And yes, he's not a better grappler than Chimaev, but Yuri Prochazka submitted Glover Teixeira in the 5th round. 5th round submissions are much more about cardio than they are about jiu-jitsu. Round 1 submissions are about jiu-jitsu. Round 5 submissions are about cardio. A guy can't move it, and the other guy says, I'll take this rear naked choke since you're just laying there. It's not exactly the highest level of jiu-jitsu once you get to round 5.
To this day, that is still one of the stupidest moves by any UFC fighter in a championship fight.
Yeah, that's pretty stupid, unfortunately.
That's what I liked the inside the distance for DDP, but also, yeah, that is insane that Chimaev in a championship fight as the challenger is plus 270 for a first round finish.
Yeah, I'd have to double check, but I think Topuria was a pretty comparable. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it might have been a little bit less. But and I was much more confident that Topuria was going to go out there and get it done in round 1. With Topuria, it was like, what happened? It could leak in round 2, but with Chimaev, I think there's much more of a likelihood it doesn't end in 1. So, all right, let's swing down to the co-main event. Unless you guys have any closing thoughts on this main event.
No.
All right. Co-main event of the evening. We have the UFC debut of Aaron Pico taking on Lerone Murphy. This is a fight that I'm not sure how people view this fight, because a lot of people have heard of, the Bellator guys coming in, and Pitbull's debut was not great. Did much better his second time out. Patchy Mix looked god awful in his debut. We also had MVP who went out there, won his debut, lost fight 2, won fight 3. He's also on this card. And then the prior to that, it's the Michael Chandler one, but that's a little bit of a different era of signing these guys. And even Chandler's not had wonderful UFC success. Did have a lot of success right out the gate, however. And I think a lot of people look at those performances and they use that to either not be thrilled about Pico, or they use that to kind of say, "Oh, Pico sucks. He was in the B leagues." And it doesn't mean he won't lose this fight, and it doesn't mean he won't, be scared of the moment. Those are two completely possible outcomes. But Pico is 27 or 28. I think he's 28. And Pico is a lifetime prospect in MMA. When Pico signed with Bellator before he fought his first fight ever, it was a big deal. A lot of people don't realize that Pico was one of the OG, but Pico won U17 World Championships in freestyle wrestling, was going to go wrestle in college, but he couldn't because he signed a sponsorship deal with Nike and one other company. And he says, well, I'll try and make the Olympic team. And he came one match short of the Olympic team and said, I'll go do MMA. And since that point, which he was 20 years old when he didn't make the Olympic team, he's been training for MMA, and now he's 8 years down in this journey. Point being here, Aaron Pico is at a much different stage of his career, and he's a very high caliber prospect entering MMA to begin with, and he's at a much different point in his career. He's more of an entering his peak guy. Well, Pitbull was clearly out of his peak. MVP out of his peak. Chandler out of his peak. Mix, you would have thought was in his peak, but, he looked scared for the moment. So, point being here, Aaron Pico is at a much different point in his career, and I think people should not cast the doubts that they had after the last couple guys onto Pico. So, I can swing it over to you guys here, Anthony. What do you make of Pico coming in to fight Lerone Murphy?
Well, yeah, to go off what you said, that's how I felt, because I had one friend that was like, I'm sick of these Bellator people. They're all garbage. And I was like, well hold on. Because the last two of them have been 40 years old already when we've got them. It's like, I promise you they were pretty good, actually, when they were in their prime fighting. For the mixed one, though, I have no words about that one. That one astonished me. I did not think that difference is Pico is 28 years old, and he's not. We haven't already seen. Well, ideally, but we haven't already seen his best work, and he's not 40 years old, and he is. It's tough though too. You got to think. I mean, it's not necessarily their fault. We're also throwing these guys straight into like top 5 fights, which is a weird play from the UFC that they insist on continually doing this. But I mean, I'm not mad at a ranked fight, but I don't know why we're really grabbing like if like we were gonna give Yair arguably a title fight off that. Like, so you're matching him up with someone that was maybe gonna fight for the title the next fight. But that's how I looked at this fight, though. Which you said he's a lifetime prospect. I think this fight is fun. I've seen it, but I just kind of looked at this as like this is like one of the best prospect versus prospect matches that you could have. Lerone being arguably one of the best UFC prospects that they've had in a while across all divisions, but specifically in featherweight. And then Pico himself, like you said, could be entering his prime or looks like he will be. And so I think that's, I mean, if there is a time to come over, I think that's right then when you would want to do it, when you'd want to be in the UFC. So I think I was really just excited for that, because I think this is, as we were talking about Chimaev, DDP, those are two people in the pool. One of them probably will be entering it soon, right after this, or get that huge win. I know Murphy has been beating some people, and he's getting the boring fighter treatment a little bit. But I still think this one, from a talent wise, from a career wise, where they're both at, it should be a really exciting, entertaining one. Hopefully.
Yeah, I agree. And before I go into that, did you see the Patchy Mix fight announcement today?
Yeah.
No.
He is fighting former KSW champion Jacob something. I don't remember.
Jacob Wackles, yeah. Something like that. Some Polish guy.
So they're using Mix to now welcome a new guy into the UFC.
Yeah, I thought that was very funny to see, considering Patchy Mix can't be the UFC guy yet. So let's have him fight these other guys who are former champions. Yeah. But as far as this fight goes, I'm excited. I think it's so funny that we still consider Lerone Murphy a prospect at 34 years old. But at the same time, he doesn't look 34. At least he hasn't so far. He looked, and I know it's boring, but he finds ways to get it done. He did it against Josh Emmett, did it against Dan Ige. I'm not saying that these are the youngest, the cream of the crop guys anymore, but he still found ways to win, and it wasn't exactly close in any of those fights from what I can remember. I do think Aaron Pico, I don't like Anthony, similar to kind of what you said. I've seen the highlights, but can't say I've ever watched a full fight of his live. I've gone back and watched one or two here and there when preparing, but it's like I don't know what to expect from him. Really coming in, and he obviously is a great knockout artist as well. Won his last 2 wins by knockout. Lerone Murphy, his majority of his wins are either decisions or knockouts. Never had a submission. Never been knocked out. I have a feeling this is going to be very fun. Stand up, throw, kick, swing, and just see who's the last man standing. I'm hoping it. I'm a little optimistic that it will be, but gotta see what happens, because it has been so weird with all the new guys coming over and their mixed success. And I do think this is a better fight for Aaron Pico coming over than the original fight of Movsar-Evloev, because I think Evloev, again, another boring featherweight, same thing as Murphy. Pico's not getting exciting guys, but maybe it's guys that they think he can knock out. The Evloev fight, I think, would have been much more on the ground, and I think it would have been a lot harder for Pico to handle than a guy who's going to stand up and swing with him.
Yeah, part of these fight bookings, especially the Evloev one, less this one. This one feels a little bit more of what direction can we go after the Evloev fight fell through, and they still wanted to get him on this card. The Evloev one felt like Pico's a really good wrestler. Like maybe he can knock out Evloev, and we can not deal with Evloev at the championship level. Kind of what that one felt like. This one feels a little bit more like Evloev pulled out, and we can add a fight to Chicago, and they take the opportunity. And I like Lerone Murphy a lot as well. I talked a lot about Pico, but I do like Lerone Murphy. For a long time, I thought Lerone Murphy was a really good prospect, and he has dealt with serious health issues. That's part of the reason he's a 34-year-old prospect, because he's had multiple situations that have made him sit out a year plus, which is never good. So that's not great. But for the longest time, I said Lerone Murphy can reach a higher level than what he's currently at. I'd like to see him reach that level. And against Edson Barboza, he went out there and looked great and kind of reached the level that I was like, I think he can reach. So I'm very optimistic about Murphy at this stage of his career, and think he can win a lot of high profile fights. But Aaron Pico is a guy who I watched a lot of his fights this week in preparation for the preview in this podcast, and I really like Pico. It's harder because he's not doing the stuff that he's doing against a high level of opposition. But throughout his fights, you see him get better, which is you obviously love to see. There's some UFC fighters who you never see get better. Pico's two best tools are his wrestling and his boxing, and he has continuously gotten better at mixing those tools together. And at this point, he is mixing those tools, but those tools are also great individually. His ability to land with power with his left hand, which is his lead hand, is ridiculous. His left hook to the head, absurd. That left, he takes it to the body. He can finish people to the body, but he takes those attacks. He can land those and then throw the right hand behind them. And he can use those shots to, if you're landing that left, once you start landing that left of the body, it's not much more to go a little bit deeper and start landing a takedown off that. And he's also a guy who he throws hard enough to where you have to respect his power. Now you're pulling out a high guard because you don't want him to land that left hook to the head and knock you out. Well, now he's going low and he's shooting takedowns, but your hands are up high because you're worried about getting hit in the face. So makes it a lot easier for him to land his takedowns. He's really good at finishing takedowns. Not as much of a submission threat, but he's a guy who it's like, well, I got the takedown and I'm going to try and punch you in the face until you stand up. And then he lands ground and pound while guys are working to their feet. And sometimes that's enough to get guys out of there. Other times they work up while he's throwing. He's great at throwing off the exit, throwing when he's breaking from the clinch, and he can get right back to his wrestling, but he always keeps pressuring guys, whether that be with boxing or with wrestling. So I think he has a very efficient style and an effective style. And against Lerone Murphy, he's going to struggle in the open space. But once he's able to corral Lerone Murphy up against the fence, I think he has a lot of success with those aforementioned tools, and he can start getting his game going. The one flaw with Pico is that he has a tendency just to get hit on the chin and just his whole body completely shuts off. And that's a bad flaw to have in MMA. But I like Pico a lot here. He is a sizable favorite. Let me get those betting odds. Pico is, I had it pulled up and then I started yapping. Minus 170. Lerone Murphy plus 132. So he's a favorite, but I do like Pico here, and maybe it's by decision by way of landing a lot of takedowns and controlling the fight with those. But I also think it's not out of the question that he lands a big shot upstairs. And I say that as a guy that has wrote a lot of positive words about Lerone Murphy and picked him to win a lot of fights. It's just a matchup thing, and I think Pico can exploit some of the defensive tendencies of Murphy.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you guys have seen much of this, but it seems like I keep seeing Aaron Pico calling for a title shot after this fight. Do you think that's warranted if he goes out and say he does go and finish Lerone Murphy?
I don't hate that. I think the Gene Silva beating Diego Lopez would have something to say about that. I think that'd be a good win, but I think if Diego Lopez wins, I don't think that'd be enough for Diego to go out there and get another title shot. So I think there's a lot of guys at featherweight that feel like they need one more. But that gives somebody an opportunity to skip the spot of needing one more. So
Exactly. That's what I was going to say with it kind of being in the situation where it's like old man Volk and it's a bunch of young guys that need their first shot. Well, eventually someone just has to get that shot. There can't be, like James was saying, that one more. Someone's just going to get to jump the line a little early.
Yeah, I mean, I think Evaloya falling out of yet another fight is just hurting his attempts to get a UFC title fight. And
Yeah.
that's why, like what you said, if Diego Lopez goes out and wins a close one with Jean Silva, and say Pico, or even on the flip side, if Lerone Murphy comes out and looks really good and gets a big win, I'm not opposed to that. You throw Arnold Allen into the mix as well as another guy who I think could, again, with a win over somebody. Because who's he scheduled to fight?
Arnold's not scheduled to fight anybody.
He isn't.
Can we get Arnold a fight for fuck's
Yeah.
sake, please?
He's the only one, isn't he? I mean, Mobstar doesn't.
Him and Yair. Can we just book? That was the one that we threw out there for fight bookings a couple weeks ago. Like, let's just work on that one. And I don't even think the winner of that would deserve a title shot, but like they could fight the winner of something else, and like we could figure some the division. Like this division is a lot of guys ranked 1 through 8. That like, what's the difference? Like a lot of the guys in this top portion of this weight class doesn't really feel like, oh, this guy's for sure number 1. This guy's for sure should be number 3. A lot of these guys are just like, can they all be ranked 5th? Like, this would be appropriate.
Well, that's
eight-man tournament.
Yeah, that's what happens when the past 6 years there's been 3 people beating everyone, so they all group up because they're technically all these people are the 4th best people at this weight, so that's why they all group up.
Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah,
that is a good way to put it.
The last thing too, I will say, I think for Pico and Murphy, though, I do think this is a decent little spot as the co-main on what I would assume should end up being a pretty big card. I know the Topuria one was obviously Topuria Oliveira was pretty big, but I think this one should be pretty massive too. So I think for a technical, more boring fighter and Pico, as much as the Bellator guys have been struggling coming over, I think there is a little sweet spot here to boost one of them, and hopefully this fight can entertain, or boost both of them ideally too, but hopefully this fight can live up to it.
Yeah, and I think that's what part of this is fun for, is they do have the knockout power, so there is that possibility. And the fight we'll talk about next is another one that I think is the way this main card has been lined up from the opener of the main card to the main event, it seems perfect in my opinion.
Yeah, we can swing down to the co-main. Carlos Prates lined up against Geoff Neal. This was a fight that was booked once. Neal pulled out. Prates had some shuffling done, and he got to fight Ian Gary in a main event. He lost that fight. Nearly won that fight, but cigarette cardio in the 5th round, come to find out, not ideal. Even when you're almost knocking the other guy out, it makes it hard to throw back when you're quite tired. But point being here, didn't take the UFC long to be like, oh, well, we'll just rebook that one that we originally wanted because it was a good one. And I think this fight's going to be an absolute banger. Jerry, it's your turn to lead us off. I'll throw out the betting odds real quick here. Prates is a fairly heavy favorite, minus 265, with Geoff Neal at plus 200. Jerry, what do you make of this welterweight scrap?
I mean, it's going to be fun. You put it in the word out there, banger. I think this is very well what this could be. I am concerned for Geoff Neal. He is 34. His last fight was a win. It was a knee injury to RDA. So RDA got hurt, couldn't go on. Before that, he fought 2 upcoming prospects. Lost a split decision to Ian Gary and was subbed by Shavkat Rakhmonov. Before that, it was Vicente Luque and Santiago Ponzinibbio, which nothing special at that point in Vicente Luque's career. He's kind of getting towards past his prime, whereas Carlos Prates has come out and sure lost by decision to Ian Gary, but knocked out Neil Magny, another guy who was kind of the gatekeeper of this division. Knocked out the Leech, which Leech has his moments where he looks really good and moments where he's flatlined on the ground in Perth, Australia.
Yeah, but he beat the living hell out of the
Leech.
That's one of the most one-sided beatings I've ever seen in my life.
That's what I was saying. Like, he was flatlined on the mat in Australia. It was just so dominant by him, and I could see that happening again. I know Geoff Neal's got a nice chin. He manages to survive. He's only ever been knocked out once, and that was, God knows, what, Kevin Holland before he was even in the UFC, apparently, which that's ironic. But it's one that it's like, if anyone could do it to him, Carlos Prates could. And these Brazilians, he's another fighting nerd, isn't he?
Yes.
They've all just looked so good. And we saw what Fluffy Hernandez did last week. I think they're riding high at the moment. And I'm going to end up taking Carlos Prates, but there is a real chance that Geoff Neal throws some haymaker from the heavens and just clips his chin and it's over.
Yeah, this is tough for me because I'm a bit of a Geoff Neal glazer, as in I don't think he has boring fights. I think he's one of the most entertaining fighters to me when he's in the octagon. His fighting style, with his boxing, his head kick as well, and then the fact that he can take damage and he's fine to get into wars. This Prates matchup might be not ideal for him though, a bit hard, but it's tough though because if you want to play, obviously, what is it, UFC logic or whatever. I mean, Ian Gary was a bit dominant against Prates rounds 1 through 4, at least. In the Geoff Neal fight was a pretty close split, I thought. I know most people definitely thought that was the right call there. It was the Gary win, but I know some people had Neal winning that one, and then he was the one that kind of gave Shavkat finally his first little tough fight before he was choked out in the third, So I think, if anything, though, regardless, I don't know if I'll go Neal with the upset or trust Prates to, get back in the win column with this one after the Gary fight. But regardless, I think Geoff Neal has the skills and just the fighting style to make this one an incredibly fun fight with Prates, especially this one being 3 rounds. So probably won't see that the gas tank, come to get Prates in this one like it did in this last one. So I think this one, has the potential to be an extremely fun striking match. And I was trying to think if Prates got dropped by Gary early in the second or third, or if maybe Gary is the one that got dropped. But I was gonna say, like you said too, though, Jerry, I think there's a different amount of weight coming between those punches between a Neal and a Gary. So if Prates does get hit in this one too, I expect a little bit more damage to be done. He might be a little bit harder to recover in this one.
Yeah, I like Geoff Neal's offensive game a lot. He starts landing that jab, and next thing you know, he's landing that southpaw straight and that southpaw left hand, and next thing you know, he's really beating the fuck out of you. The ball rolls down the hill fast when you're fighting Geoff Neal, and if things don't go your way early, and things start going Geoff Neal's way, it becomes a tough night. And Vicente Luque has historically struggled significantly against southpaws. So that was kind of in hindsight, a pretty good matchup for Neal. But that was the fight that made Vicente become washed.
Mm-hmm.
Because Geoff Neal gave him didn't knock him out, but he gave him a brain hemorrhage.
I actually had Luque in that one too. I think was I had both chips. They were both kind of dark horses, like who's going to be the next one to pop. And I think I actually put it on Luque. I thought he was going to be the one to go further and maybe challenge for a title, but not after that fight.
Yeah, that was a tremendous performance by Geoff Neal, and I think that Geoff Neal could do a lot of work here. The problem with Prates is, aside from the cardio, and I don't think he's a wonderful grappler, but he also doesn't throw a ton. But Geoff Neal could win this off being more active. But then on the other hand, it's well, Prates can land one punch and either win the fight or win a round. He does fight changing level damage when he lands shots. And so that really kind of made this a tough fight for me to call. But when you look at those struggles that Neal has had, and even though he's had success in these fights, you listed off 3 of them, Jerry. His only knockout loss, Kevin Holland, went to absolute war with Shavkat, ultimately ended up losing, and Shavkat landed a ton of big shots in that in that fight. And he got outpointed by Ian Machado Gary. 3 different fighters, but all 3 long for the weight class. Those are 3 very long fighters, and that's something that Prates is as well. And I think length is going to be the issue for Geoff Neal here, and I don't think he can't have good moments, but I think ultimately he's not going to land as much as he usually does against a opponent closer to his size. So I think he struggles with the length here, and I think Prates lands big shots that either are enough to land the knockout or enough to get him enough damage to win rounds. So as much as I'm a guy who picks Geoff Neal in a lot of fights, but I'm also a guy who picks Carlos Prates in a lot of fights. So I'm going Prates this weekend.
Even going off what you just said about the length, you look at the other two guys who he lost to in the UFC, Neal Magny and Wonderboy.
Yeah.
Two more lengthy guys, and it's just something about it. He just can't get his reach going, can't get his strikes going. And if Prates hits him with some power, and even more so, if he goes after the legs a bit and does some leg kicks, keeping him a distance, it's going to be a problem night for Geoff Neal.
Yeah, and Prates is a weird long, too. Like, those guys are all weird, and like Magny and Wonderboy, and they're all weird in their own different way. But Prates, his arms like hang down to his knees. He's a very weird build and very long.
I did want to say too, but yeah, besides the Neal Magny for length, I'm sorry, it wasn't the Geoff Neal fight. It was the Luke right before. It was the Bilal Muhammad fight to add insult to injury. That's the one I watched where he got dominated for 5 rounds, and I was like, this isn't fun.
Yeah. But I think Geoff Neal did knock out Bilal. I might have my fights mixed up, or maybe that was Luke. Luke knocked out Bilal.
Geoff Neal beat Bilal by decision.
All right. Well, good in my book. I'm fine with that.
You're right. Luke did knock out Bilal.
All right.
That was in the first one, I think.
Bilal,
that was back in 2016.
Yeah. Luke knocked him out, and then they did the rematch, and I was like, he's going to knock him out again. And then that's back when FanDuel was boosting props every weekend. And boy, did I bite the bait on that one. And I bet the Luque knockout boost. Told all my friends to as well. So not great on that one. All right. Let's go down to another great fight. I love this fight as well. Jared Cannonier versus Michael Venom Page. I think this is an absolutely tremendous fight. And at this stage of Jared Cannonier's career, he's basically just been like, fuck it. We're going to go to war here. And like, you might hit me really hard, but like, if the ref doesn't stop this fight, I'm going to get up and try and hit you really hard. And Jared Cannonier has just quietly become one of the most exciting fighters on the roster. His fight with Gregory Rodriguez was tremendous. He ate some shots against Barajo, ate some shots against Imavov. The Jared Cannonier run of late has been filled with excitement. Some really low points if you're a Jared Cannonier fan. There's been some points at which I'm a Jared Cannonier supporter, just purely based on how underrated he is. And there's been some moments in there where I've been quite pissed. Fuck you, Jason Herzog. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Absolutely ridiculous stoppage. But he's in there against MVP, who is a absolute spectacle to watch as well. So I'm pumped for this fight. Betting odds have it Michael Venom Page -205, Jared Cannonier +158. Anthony, I think it's your turn to lead us off. What do you make of Jared Cannonier and Michael Venom Page?
Yeah, I mean, I do like this fight, but I hate it for the reason I'll say is because outside of Bobby Nux, Jared Cannonier for the past, I don't know, however years, 4 or 5 years, has been like my favorite dark horse fighter. Like, always wanted to see him, but just really couldn't beat Izzy or Whitaker to really ever get there fully. And then now, watching him, they've just been matching him up with the 2 best prospects in the division. And then he, finally got back in the win column against G-Rod. And as he gets older, I just feel like I could easily see Michael Venom Page point fighting masterclass where nothing really happens here, and I have to watch 3 rounds of that. But so that's why I hate this fight, because this would be me taking Jared Cannonier hands down. But I'm just worried with the age. It's not like MVP's really young himself, though. But I just think the way MVP's career has been so far in the UFC, it's been pretty intelligent point fighting with very low output too, which kind of worries me. But if anything, I know I'm still hoping Cannonier can get in and make this a little bit dirtier, a little bit more higher pace. And the other thing with how good Cannonier striking is he can wrestle too. And so I hope he could maybe get some wrestling off in this one too, to just give MVP another look to deal with. But definitely as of right now, I'm still leaning maybe just a point fighting win from MVP.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with you. I do think MVP will get the point fighting style going, but if he doesn't, and if like Jerry Cannonier does go out and wrestles a bit, I think Jerry Cannonier, even at 41, still has more power in his punches if they land than Michael Venom Page. But is he going to be able to get that close enough to do so? And I want to say thank you, Michael Venom Page, for almost getting rid of Shar Bullet. He did his part, and then Marc-Andre Bellerio messed it up. But that's the other thing. You look at the guys who Michael Venom Page has fought coming in since he's been in the UFC. Nothing against Kevin Holland, but he looked confused in that fight by Michael Venom Page's style. Ian Gary, a better fighter, so fair play for him losing. Then he looked good against Shara Bullet, but we've talked time and time again on Herrick about how Shara Bullet's really not all that good. So it seems a little skewed. And I'm like, I know Michael Venom Page was really, really good. I don't know how good he is now. And we've seen that Jared Cannonier, even fighting against these young guys, he's still going and still putting on a damn good performance. So like, there's a good chance I take Jared Cannonier, but I can very well see Michael Venom Page just kind of jab, kick, and move. And for the odds, like I like Jared Cannonier's odds betting wise.
Yeah, I am consider myself a Jared Cannonier truther. I think my prediction of Jared Cannonier versus Marvin Vettori is one of the favorite predictions I've ever written for the site, because it basically said he was going to beat his ass for 5 rounds without knocking him out, and he did. And I kind of broke down the way he was going to do it, and I was very impressed with that performance. And I had him to beat Strickland as well. The outrage of that being a robbery is still to this day the dumbest shit ever, because it wasn't a robbery. People just like Sean Strickland for some reason and decided it was a robbery because they're stupid fans.
Little did they know they would do that for the next 5 years too, about every decision.
Yeah, that is true. So I like Cannonier a lot, and I picked him to beat Imavov. And for somehow, Imavov, who looked like he was on a different planet against Roman Dolidze in the light rounds, looked fresh in the championship rounds against Cannonier. I don't know how that could have possibly happened. I have no clue how someone has such high highs and low lows of cardio. I couldn't tell you. I haven't had the slightest idea. And I might have even picked Cannonier against Barajo. That one, hats off to Barajo. He deserved to win that one.
Yeah.
But the thing that I don't like about the current place of Jared Cannonier is it's nothing to do with his skills. I still think he's very skilled. But at the end of the day, he's a 41-year-old whose durability is declining, and he has struggled against fast fighters and fighters who can counter. And Michael Venom Page, I don't love the idea of Michael Venom Page fighting at 185 pounds. That's another aspect of this that I'm not a fan of for MVP. But his style is one where if he's getting his style going, it doesn't matter that he's smaller, because he still has the length. It's a physicality thing that he doesn't have. And in this fight, I think his speed advantage is going to be big enough to where when he's doing that bladed in and out, and trying to land on the in and outs, I think he can get in and out while landing while not getting hit. And I think if Cannonier gets aggressive, I think Cannonier will get hit. But I don't think this turns into a point fighting fight at all, because I don't think Cannonier lets it. I think Cannonier is going to go in there, and if he starts losing a point fighting match, I think he's going to recklessly get inside and try and either land takedowns. And the thing about Cannonier is if he lands takedowns, he isn't one for control, because he's just going to go for ground and pound and try and knock somebody out with ground and pound. But I also think that if he gets inside, like, there's absolutely zero doubt in my mind that Cannonier can land a big shot that knocks Michael Venom Page out. But at the same time, he's also putting himself at risk to get knocked out. So in my mind, I kind of think Jared Cannonier is going to be on the outside of this one. not having a lot of success 2.5 minutes in. And then ultimately, I expect Jared Cannonier to just say, well, I'm going to go down swinging. And he's either going to win or he's going to go down swinging. So I think this ends up being a ridiculous fight that ends in knockout. I tend to take MVP just because I haven't seen the regression in speed yet. And I haven't seen the regression in durability yet. So I tend to think he's the one who gets it done. But I'm not counting Jared Cannonier out. But I am picking against him, if that makes sense.
That is I would say just that's the other one of the other reasons is I'm give or take with him being 40s and all that stuff, but it is the durability of he got knocked out against Imavov, which early, but still
he was
on
hurt.
the table to
he was
fully
still hurt.
happen. Yeah, exactly. And then Brallo, like you said, hit him with some good shots, and even so, he's been taking damage too, and a bit more damage in these recent fights than obviously when he was more in his prime too. And I think probably had the speed and everything to get out of there. But I do think too. I do think he's a smart fighter as well, which is always good. I like his leg kicks, his calf kicks. He's someone that does also go all three parts of the body. Not I wouldn't put him as like a huge body strikes though type of guy, but that's why he's just super well rounded. He has the wrestling. He uses all three levels, but I also think too is that like you said, if he can wrestle and he gets a takedown, a la Derek Brunson, those ground and pound strikes, like he can definitely get someone out of there. So I'm just worried. We'll see if it gets there.
Yeah. A lot of people see Jared Cannonier, big black guy who throws hard, and don't think he's thinking in there. But like he has very good footwork and like intelligently lines up shots and lands shots. He isn't just accidentally hitting guys. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of guys who swing big like that and hit nothing. And people haven't figured out that some fighters do things with their feet that put them in a position to land. Jared Cannonier is thinking out there, lining guys up, doing the right things with his feet. He's a much smarter guy than I think a lot of people believe, just purely because of what he looks like.
And he's also precise with his strikes, which is even more impressive for a guy of his size. Like he knows where he's hitting, and he does hit the target more often than not.
Yeah, this guy was lined to pick him with Marvin Vettori. It's still one of the craziest things I've ever seen. I was like, you're gonna have to hammer that.
That's what it's like. When it's just stand and bang and the people have power and the knockouts like heavyweights and it's like like no, I don't like that style of fighting, and it's like, why do you like Jared Cannonier? And it's like, if that's sincerely what you think he fights like, we're not watching the same thing.
Yeah, some people have massive misperceptions on what he does well and doesn't do well. It's kind of like how Max Holloway is still considered a volume boxer. It's like, do you see how many times he's throwing kicks out there? Like, what are you watching?
I do want to put this out there. Like, I know he's 41 and it's a long time ago since he fought at light heavyweight, but that size difference, because even you just said, James, like you don't like the idea of Michael Venom Page fighting at 185. He's small for 185. Jared Cannonier is very big for 185.
Yeah.
So it's one that, I mean, wasn't he a heavyweight fighter at one point in time when he started? So it's.
I think him and McGregor are the only fighters with knockout in 3 different divisions.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, like that's even crazier is the fact that he's still going and he has improved from that crazy guy just throwing at heavyweight to what he is now. And I think that size difference, especially if he uses it on the ground, could be a very big difference maker.
Yeah, I did say this earlier, but like he's not really a control guy. He's much more willing to let up some control and able to, and in an effort to land ground and pound. But like, if there's ever a fight he can control somebody, it would be this one, considering the size difference. Like, if he's able to get this to a point, whether it be in the clinch or in top position, where he can really flex his physicality advantage, it might result in minutes of success. That might be enough to win a round. And in a 3-round fight, you only have to do it twice. Like, and another thing, Jared Cannonier isn't the guy who's going to quit. Like, if he was going to quit, he would have quit in there against RoboCop last time out and retired. But that's not what he's trying to do at this point in his career. So that's another nice thing about Jared Cannonier is like maybe he wins 2 rounds here by leveraging his physicality on the inside and landing some takedowns. And like maybe he's hurt in that 3rd round, but like he's up 2-0 and it's like he's not packing it in at all. He's not even thinking about it. So that is another thing that's nice about Jared Cannonier, and broke his arm against Robert Whittaker, I believe, and went out there and kept fighting. So there's a lot of positive things for Jared Cannonier in that regard as well. All right. Final fight on the main card. Tim Elliott versus Kai Asakura. Kai Asakura made his UFC debut against Alexandre Pantoja. Did not go his way. Not really the easiest matchup for big explosive striker. Taking on highly physical BJJ submission specialist who submits everybody. And that loss doesn't look as bad now that he's also submitted Kai Kara-France as well. So, but now, they're kind of putting Kai Asakura in a spot where it's like, bro, you have to go beat Tim Elliott. And that's fair in my opinion. Like, let's really go prove yourself that you are a UFC level flyweight who deserves to be ranked just outside of that top 10. And if you win, they'll move them up the ranking. So kind of a prove it spot here for Kai Asakura. And he's lined as a guy who's going to prove it in that prove it spot. Minus 350, come back on Tim Elliott, plus 255. Jerry, I think it's your turn to lead us off here. What do you make of Asakura and Elliott?
I mean, Asakura's first fight in the UFC, like you said, was rough. But everybody who Pantoja has fought as the champion has had a rough time going against him. So this is no different. I think this is a great stepping stone and a great place to start out after that type championship fight. A guy like Tim Elliott, been around for a long time, fought a lot of the top guys in flyweight history even. And now he's 38. He does, however, still have some ground game and some skill on the ground. 7 submissions in his career. His last time out against Sumadori, did get this triangle submission in the first round. That's something that we've seen Asakura has issues with. But this is one that if you're Asakura, you cannot let anything go to waste. You have to go at him. Hopefully you've learned some takedown defense since your last fight. And you got to go and put Tim Elliott on his butt, then finish this fight. Otherwise, we're going to look at you like, you can't go out and even make it competitive with Tim Elliott. You have no shot against anyone in that top 10. And nothing against Tim Elliott, but he's well past his prime. This is his 35th professional fight. I think that has all it has to say for itself.
Yeah, I'd say it's going to be bad if he loses this one too. But I do think, yeah, kind of like you said, I don't have much on this fight. I do think it's a nice prove it spot. I thought people were a little too hard on him for. I think just sometimes you have people coming over from other promotions. We talked about it with Bellator earlier, but he lost that, and I thought some people were a little too hard on him. And like you said, everything since like there's Pantoja, it's like I don't know if you should really hold that against him too much. But to be fair, also, I think this is a little bit too big of a dip in competition from Pantoja because I'm not the hugest Tim Elliott fan. But this, regardless, like you said, Jerry, is a complete. You need to win this because you will get laughed out pretty bad a little bit if going from title fight first match and then losing this one back to back. But I think he has the striking and everything, and even some takedown defense. There's a sizable difference too, but I think Tim Elliott's wrestling and Pantoja's. So I think it's a fine opener. Obviously, a clear setup spot for Asakura to get back into good graces and then have another shot at it with even casual fans. I only got to see him one time losing the championship fight. So
yeah, I'm not too mad about Kai Asakura's loss because he went in there, threw some bombs, threw that knee, tried to really do some positive things there. But ultimately, Pantoja is really big, could fight at 35, really good, great. Tim Elliott's smaller and not as good, and the size difference here is probably going to be pretty ridiculous, I imagine. The speed difference is going to be these guys aren't even close to the same tier of athlete. And Pantoja, when Pantoja's at that problem, he can just kind of walk through it. Tim Elliott can't just walk through that level of size and speed difference. So I think Kai Asakura is going to absolutely splatter Tim Elliott at some point. He may have to defend some takedowns, and if he doesn't gas out brutally defending some takedowns or working back to his feet, I think at some point in this fight, he just puts Tim Elliott out cold. I think he lands a brutal shot. So I've got I've got Kai Asakura by KO here.
That's what I'm going to take.
It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. because unless Tim Elliott pulls off some miracle submission,
Yeah.
then
Which I'd be shocked, but
yeah.
I guess crazier things have happened.
Oh yeah, Derek
All
Lewis
right.
flying knee.
Yeah.
Let's hit some final thoughts here on our way out. Prelims we had one fight get added. We had a cancellation. So the prelims have kind of been moving and shaking recently. Anthony, I think it's your turn to lead us off here. So from these prelims, what are some final thoughts from you?
I'll start off with the Gerald Mearshart, Mikaela Jacek. I think that's a pretty fun one. I noticed it didn't get. It's not the featured one. I think that replacement one is, or whatever that short one. But I think GM3 is I always like him, pretty fun fighter for someone that's almost like a 50-50 guy. Probably wins a little bit more than he loses, but has been in some fun wars, striking wise, is obviously really good on the ground with jiu-jitsu. So kind of, has some skill everywhere, getting a little older now, but has been known to be in some real fun ones. And then Oli Jacek is the Polish fighting nerd, right? I think he's
Yeah,
the
he's just
first
moved
Polish
over.
fighting nerd. So he himself also has fun, good striking, fun hands. So he's been in some fun fights as well. A little bit, maybe working on the ground game with the fighting nerds and stuff. But I think that's overall just kind of a fun middleweight, unranked fight right there. And then the other one I'll say is Chase Hooper, at it again. 25, getting a little older, maybe too old. I feel like he's already has 15 fights already, but no, he's pretty sizable step up. Was his last one against Jim Miller? Yeah, so he's fighting someone that's not 45. So I think this is a big one here. I do not think Alex Hernandez is good. Could be still too big of a step up for Chase Hooper. I don't know. Well, that's what we'll have to see. But I'm hoping Chase Hooper can get past this one and start for watching him as a prospect for like 6 fights in a row. It would be nice to see him start actually not only just getting wins, but start climbing the ranks a little bit. Like I don't want to keep seeing him against Jim Millers and stuff like that. So I think this is finally a big spot to like, hey, let's get some momentum and get you going upwards a little bit.
Yeah, eventually you have to fight someone who's going to propel you towards the rankings.
Yes.
And if he was beating Jim Miller 10 years ago, maybe, but that wasn't the case because he would have been 15 at the time. But no, I'll start with the one that they added, and I'm sure, James, you got a little bit more to talk on this, but Baisengor Susurkayev.
Yeah,
and
if
Herrick
you struggle with the name, Dana White was just calling him Jimmy. So
yeah, I heard Jimmy Sue now is his nickname on Twitter.
Yeah, I believe so.
But what a performance in the Dana White's Contender Series this week. Front body kick, TKO. Now 4 days later, fighting a guy who's won his last 3 fights all by knockout. Don't know much about Eric Nolan, but he's 8-3. I think this is one that, Susukayev is a teammate of Khamzat Chimaev, so we know how that goes. And these guys seem crazy. He seems ready to go, and we'll see what happens, especially come the weigh and see if he can make weight again twice in 1 week.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm saying, and the other one, who doesn't love watching Edson Barbosa fight? Even at this age, he's still just swinging and throwing spinny shit, which is always a good time.
Yeah, Edson Barbosa back at 155 pounds as well.
Yeah.
Looks like he's been eating good. Nothing but good meals and meal prep from Edson Barbosa to get back up to 155 pounds. But boy, did he look jacked. You guys hit a lot of the fights I like. Those are 4 really good fights for the prelims of a pay-per-view. Yeah, and this Baisengor Suzukayev fella looks very, very good on Contenders. So I think he's fighting a little bit of a who the hell will show up and fight this guy on a couple of days' notice type of situation. But credit to both of them for being willing to take the fight, and they're the fight before the pay-per-view. Because that was originally supposed to be Jim Miller and Diego Ferreira, or excuse me, not Jim Miller, Bobby Green and Diego Ferreira. And that fight got pulled, so they just slotted this one right in the time slot, and they even threw him up there at the press conference. So they're all in on Jimmy Sue or whatever we're going to start calling this guy. I still got to figure out how to pronounce his name. And then last one I'll throw out that you guys didn't touch on, Brian Battle versus Nursultan Ruziboyev. I like Brian Battle. I think he's a pretty good prospect, and he's impressed me throughout his career. And Nursultan isn't the best guy in the world, kind of a fraud, but we've kind of found out he's a fraud. So now he's just a good enough guy to where if you beat him, I'll give you some credit. So it's a good fight for Brian Battle, and I think it's a decent test for him against another big guy who can hit pretty hard. It's a dangerous fight for sure. So I'd be impressed if Battle were able to get a win here, and maybe we start talking ranked opponents. Maybe he can fight like a Neal Magny or D-Rod. Or Randy Brown can fight one of those guys. Brian Battle can fight the other if Brian Battle wins, and we can start pushing even more prospects up at 100 and 170 pounds. So that's another one I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I'll throw one more out there just out of curiosity. I think it'll be an entertaining one to open up the whole card. Was it Alibi Idris and Joseph Morales? Morales fought in the UFC previously, went 1-2, lost to Davison Figueiredo and Eric Shelton. I don't think Eric Shelton's in the UFC anymore. Davison Figueiredo, we know all about him, but he's making his return and fighting this Kazakhstanian, whatever the pronunciation of how you say someone's from Kazakhstan.
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to.
But he's 10-0, 6 finishes, making his UFC debut. He's coming in at 30, so interesting. But I'm more just intrigued to see how he does in this UFC debut because I was like seeing these guys who are, okay, you've earned your way here. Now, how are you actually going to perform when the lights are the brightest?
Yeah, that is the Ultimate Fighter finale. And
that's right. That is what that is. Yeah.
I watched a couple episodes of The Ultimate Fighter. I think I saw both of these guys fight once, and I was kind of like, oh, that's not bad at all. And come to find out, they ended up winning their next fight after I stopped watching the season because I have a tendency to do that with The Ultimate Fighter. Then the guys make it to the finale, and I'm like, oh, shit. Now the show's spoiled. Now I got to figure out how I can go back and watch these guys after the fact to figure out if they're going to win. But they're on the prelims, so
because
I'm going to start a full preview, thankfully.
Wasn't that the other fight that was canceled?
The other Ultimate Fighter finale got canceled, and they rebooked it for UFC Noche.
Oh,
so, but yes, this is not a bad fight at all to open the card, and Ultimate Fighter finale fights tend to be not bad. So,
yeah.
All right. Make sure to head over to vendettasportsmedia.com. Our preview will be up. That will have full fight breakdowns as well as everyone's predictions. So all three of our predictions will be in there. And Bossman Trey even threw in a prediction for the week as well. So that will be scattered in there as well. So you got to search for that one. I won't tell you what fight it's on. You get to go find that for yourself. I will have best bets up this week. There are a couple bets that I like, so we will have best bets for sure, probably up tonight or tomorrow. And bunch of posts for the television deal are up on Vendetta Sports Media as well. Lastly, make sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube, especially if you've made it this far into this show, and come back for next week. Next week, we'll have to play it by ear, but there will definitely be some form of a pay-per-view recap, and then we'll figure out how long that's going to take us, and maybe we incorporate some of the broadcast news into next week. That's going to be probably a last-second decision based on how these fights go and how long they take to talk about. So that is the plan for next week. But most importantly, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you in the future.